America, I think there's a good majority of you who don't really understand the full scope of what's going on with Hillary Clinton. And this right here, I hope, will be the piece of information that'll get you guys to start understand how incredibly terrifying this woman is. Now, there are a long list of bodies with intimate knowledge of what goes on with the Clintons that are deceased. And it's been called by this point the Clinton body count. And I know when you hear something called the Clinton body count, it sounds like something preposterous that was made up by some crazy conspiracy theorist. And there's no point in even looking into it whatsoever. Now, keep in mind, first and foremost, the information contained in these leaks. We've already found out that the Democratic National Committee sabotaged their own party member, Bernie Sanders. This has caused several members of the Democratic National Committee, including the head of it, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, to step down. And now we've got another DNC staffer who is deceased. Now, the media wanted us to believe that this man died in a robbery gone bad. But then we find out that the man still had his wallet, he had his watch, he had his credit cards, he had his money. Anything that was on him that was of value was not taken. Now, after this gentleman, Seth Rich, I believe his name is, was murdered, the local police station, well, the police department there where he was murdered, offered a $25,000 reward for anybody who could find information about the murder. I'm sorry, but I thought that kind of money was reserved looking for fugitives who are on the top 10 most wanted list. Or am I sorely mistaken? I don't know. That seems like a lot of money, doesn't it? Well, right after they did that, Julian Assange, the founder of WikiLeaks, who is still a political prisoner in Ecuador, offered a $20,000 reward for anybody who could bring evidence on who murdered this man. And then he pulled a Jim Comey, right? Because we all saw the speech where the director of the FBI, Jim Comey, laid out all the information against Hillary Clinton on why she was guilty and how she lied, but then elected not to prosecute her. He didn't directly say that she was guilty, but he gave you a whole big long list of reasons of why she obviously would be. Julian Assange essentially did the same thing. He did an interview on TV and he basically said every single thing except the Seth Rich was the source for all the leaks that are implicating all these people in the Democratic Party, and especially Hillary Clinton and the Clinton Foundation. So, this latest member of the Democratic Party who was murdered, according to Julian Assange, is the reason that we have heard about this leaks in the first place, and he's now dead. And the media lied about how he died in the first place until somebody dig in and found out that it was a lie. Now, keep in mind, guys, that this stuff is all linked together. okay? Because that happened, and a couple of weeks before that happened, Julian Assange's lawyer was hit by a train. Isn't it interesting that Julian Assange's lawyer and the man responsible for the WikiLeaks DNC/Hillary Clinton private server leaks end up dead? And if you want to go back a couple of weeks before that, the ex-president of the UN, John Ash, was set to testify in an unrelated case. And his testimony was going to implicate the Clinton Foundation. They came out with some bogus story about how he died, and it came out that he had his throat crushed. This was the president of the United Nations. It's multiple instances of things like this that a Clinton body count list even exists. And what you're all saying is the same thing. Well, how could she kill all of these people and still be free and still be running for office, etc., etc.? This is the piece that should make the American public understand. Most of our politicians are backed and controlled by people with ridiculous amounts of wealth. This is a pretty big email leak that I'm going to demonstrate to you, and I want you to keep in mind that this right here pales in comparison to some of the other information that has been released. But this is what links it all together for the ordinary American to understand. Now, what this says here is that there's a leaked email showed George Soros urged Clinton to intervene in Albania's civil unrest. George Soros is one of the richest men on the planet. He is so incredibly rich that he has been known as the currency killer in several nations, because he's so incredibly rich that he has actually single-handedly destroyed currency of nations. You see what I'm saying here? Do you understand the amount of wealth that's going on with this man and what you can do with that kind of wealth? Now, he sent her an email reaching out to the Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, over a foreign policy dispute in Albania. And as you can see in this email right here, Jacob Sullivan, Huma Abedin, Gordon Phillips, etc., etc. And here goes. It's got all this stuff right here, and this is below as a message from George Soros. So, she's receiving messages on our little private server there from one of the richest men on the planet. And he says there's a situation going on in Albania that needs attention at the senior levels of the U.S. government. And he goes on and talks about it, and he gives her a list right here. The left-wing billionaire also gave Clinton a list of potential nominees to appoint as mediator: Carl Bildt, Marty Adasari, and Miroslav Lajcak. And the email was sent from Soros' aide to Richard Verma, then the Assistant Secretary of State for Legislative Affairs, who forwarded it to several of Clinton's top aides, including none other than Huma Abedin, Jacob Sullivan, and Philip Gordon. And for those of you who don't know who Huma Abedin, she's basically Hillary Clinton's liaison to all of her ISIS ties over in the Middle East. Okay? That, even regardless of what you think about that comment, I want you to understand where I'm going with this, guys. Now, he gives her this list of 3 people that need to step in and intervene. 3 days after Hillary Clinton received this email from George Soros, the EU ended up sending Soros' suggested nominee, Lajcak, to mediate the civil unrest, the BBC reports. And as you can see right here, when you click the link, which is taking a second to load. It says EU urges Albania to defuse political crisis. And as you see right here, in the very second paragraph of this article, EU envoy Miroslav Lajcak met Albanian leaders in the capital Tirana on Wednesday. Right? So 3 days after Hillary Clinton received this email from billionaire George Soros, a man who was known as the destroyer of currencies in several nations, sent Hillary Clinton a directive. Don't misunderstand. That was not a suggestion. That was a directive. And he gave her one of three options. And as you can see, she chose one of those three options because you do not say no to a man as rich as George Soros. And what you need to understand, America, is lots of our politicians in the White House right now are being backed and controlled. Backed and controlled by billionaires like George Soros, as shown evidence in this leak right here. Now you start to understand how Hillary Clinton could have so many bodies and so much corruption and so much death and tragedy in her wake. This is how she can still be running for president of the United States. Because when you have the wealth of people like George Soros behind you, who can fund groups like the BLM to keep you distracted, who can control the media and tell you the polls that she's up by 10 points, even though most of the polls that aren't in the mainstream media say just the opposite. And once again, I stress to you, America, this is only the tip of the iceberg. Regardless of what you think about Trump, who's never actually done anything political in his life, or Jill Stein, or any of these other people, you have to look at not just words, but look at the actions and all the things that this woman has been involved in, and all the people surrounding her controversy that are coming up dead, and see her being controlled by these billionaires, and ask yourself, is this somebody I can really trust to protect my best interest and my freedoms as an American? It's time for a wake-up call, America.